What's up, everybody? Welcome back to BitLab Academy. I have an incredible guest today to talk about one of what I think is going to be the most hidden gem, but it's actually not so hidden. It's right in plain sight if you know what you're looking for. And it actually does something that almost no other crypto out there does, which is have the vetting of the Department of Defense. Now, you might ask yourself, why is that something that's good? Well, if you consider how much information is transmitted on a daily basis between different government bodies, thinking about the Department of Transportation, thinking about the U.S. Air Force. It's so far beyond our comprehension. It's not even funny. So if you have a crypto that's already well integrated into that ecosystem, and they're starting to roll out onto the enterprise level, onto the retail level with already a trusted system, this is the type of thing that I want to get behind. So without any further ado, we're going to just jump right on into it. We got Dagnum here, and he is here from basically Constellation DAG, as well as, you know what, a lot of other things that are going on here. One of them is FAIRDESK Collective. So Dagnum, how you doing? What is going on? How did you get from the Department of Defense to now be rolling out into retail? And why should anybody be considering Constellation DAG over anything else?
Yeah, well, it's an exciting day. So I'm here representing Stardust Collective, which is the community side of Constellation Network. And today is a big day because they opened up their first ever inaugural hackathon. And there you go. And we at Stardust Collective actually put up half of the funds for this hackathon. So in total, it's $100,000 in prizes. And it's not just Stardust and Constellation that are putting this on. There's actually big partners. We have Panasonic, IBM, and Symbichain that are all partnering this event. And so it's a big deal. I mean, that in and of itself, just think about that. In that headline there, Panasonic and IBM. The fact that these two major enterprises are standing behind this hackathon should give everybody the validation and the comfort that it's okay to build on this chain.
So let me pause you there for a second. I want to pause you there for a second, just because I think it's my duty, it's my job to make sure everybody out there that's watching really understands what's going on, because I think you want to highlight something here I want to get into in a second. But if I've been in the crypto ecosystem, let's say 3 months, 6 months, or 6 years, let's first start with what Constellation DAG is. Talk a little bit about how this chain may be situated within the crypto universe, why something like the U.S. Air Force or other Department of Defense systems or other government bodies, what is it about Constellation DAG that made them interested in, basically employing this into their systems? And how is this going to be? Is there a different arm of this, or how is this now going to roll out to retail? Give us a little bit of a sort of rundown on that, and then we can dive into what the hackathon is and why this is important, especially for speculators out there, and what this may mean for basically the speculative idea of where price could be going.
Right. So I use blockchain as just a general term, just as like a blanket term. But for those people who actually understand the technology, Constellation's distributed ledger technology, which is another term for blockchain, but Constellation's architecture is actually based off of a directed acyclic graph. And so in that aspect, it can do multiple things simultaneously, and it can also scale. So instead of waiting for one transaction to process, it can actually process multiple transactions at once. So to give you like an analogy that normal people can understand, imagine Black Friday, you're at Walmart or you're at Target, you're at some major, huge super center. There's thousands of people in there trying to get those deals. So imagine there's just one checkout person. That's blockchain. DAG, on the other hand, is if you had thousands of checkouts all happening at the same time. And everybody's checking out different stuff, but all these transactions are all happening simultaneously and instantly. And so that makes it faster. So you don't have to wait on the checkout next to you. because you're in a separate checkout. That's probably the easiest way to explain the difference between a directed acyclic graph and a blockchain. The other reason that the Department of Defense specifically was interested in this technology, because it's a DAG architecture, it's actually quantum resistant. So, I mean, you can't really say anything as proof because, I mean, we don't know what the next threat vector is. But this technology has already been validated as a secure, scalable solution by the Department of Defense. So if you're wanting to build an application, if you're IBM, Microsoft, Panasonic, all these people that are in a roundabout way already doing stuff with this technology, would you want to go with another network that has had downtime or security issues? Or are you wanting to go with somebody that has already been battle tested as a secure, scalable solution by the Department of Defense? And that has actually been achieved on Constellation's network because they built a private layer 1 chain for US Transcom. And how US Transcom was using this blockchain network is they have a sub of that called the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, or CRAF. So in times of need, like a couple of years ago when we saw the rapid withdrawal in Afghanistan, or maybe you have some special operators that you're wanting to send on a secret squirrel mission in Africa or the Middle East, right? You're not going to send an Air Force jet because everybody knows what that is. And so what you have is these contractors bidding on an operation, and then they all hop in a FedEx plane, and then they go and they do their thing. And what the government wanted is if they could provide a secure, immutable solution, and that's what Constellation did. And so how this translates into a retail perspective is you can take that same technology that's already been validated by the government as a secure solution, and you could, instead of doing it US Transcom, you could maybe implement it in your own brick and mortar business that's already up and running. And that's the other advantage of Constellation's technology. You can take your existing Web 2 applications and just plug it right into their framework. And that's really what we're hoping to see from this hackathon, is all these developers building out these application-specific networks. It could be anywhere from like a DPIN application. That's a big hot thing in crypto right now. Constellation already has a DPIN application that's live on the network right now. Before DPIN was even called DPIN, they purchased a company in 2021 called Door Technologies that monitors foot traffic. And so how that's valuable is retail stores can track analytics. So maybe, like Levi's has this campaign and they want to see how effective their campaign was. They put out tons of advertisements. They spend lots of dollars on this advertisements. Well, they want to see how many people are actually walking through the door and how this translates into a point of sale. So you can link up this door sensor with the point of sale thing, and you can actively see how many sales got triggered by that event. I mean, there's lots of different ways that, because all it is data. And that's what Constellation DAG is, that they're just tokenizing data. So you can craft your application-specific network into any use case.
Well, it seems like to me, one of the things I try to remind, the audience, anybody that's watching, any of you that are watching right now, is that the majority of altcoins that are out there, or the majority of blockchains that are out there, I would say all of them other than Bitcoin, everybody thinks that there's this guarantee, and they don't realize that the majority of altcoins that are trading now are going to be, in 15 years, aren't going to be there anymore, because you're basically investing in a promise, a VC sort of thing. So what I really liked, when I started looking into Constellation DAG, is that it's already well beyond that VC marketplace thing where you're like investing in the speculation of what might be delivered, because you already have those contracts with the Department of Defense, with Transcom, and so on and so forth, showing that the utility has been realized. But that does not yet mean in any way that the full expansion and the development beyond what its initial utilities have been targeted at are still possible. I think that's why you guys, I could be wrong. I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why you're pushing out this hackathon, to help incentivize and get the word out for people to start going and seeing what curiosity can really drive different applications and utilizations of the technology. The other thing is, we look at things like, everybody wants to look at the tokenomics of an altcoin. They want to look at the TPS, transactions per second. And from everything that I've seen, those numbers have been nothing but, up until I think looking into DAG, looking in this just directed acyclic graphs, is that those numbers have just been hype numbers, because none of it has been fully realized. It's been theoretical. And as you said, there's a congestion within each one of those things. Now, what I really like about DAG is that the entire design of it allows for, essentially, I don't want to call it multi-threading, but allowing to do multiple actions at the same time, which is, I'm ex-US Air Force. So I know specifically, anytime any contract was taken, anytime anything was even purchased, there was so many different levels of checks and balances along the way to meet everything from safety requirements to government HR required. I mean, there's 150 different requirements to do anything within the Department of Defense. So the fact that there's a blockchain that's already being utilized in that sector speaks volumes about the level of thoughtfulness that was put into the design of Constellation DAG. So with that being said, tell us about this hackathon. Is this something that anybody can get involved with? Is this something that you're specifically looking just for devs, or is there a broader thing here where it's kind of a cross between getting the word out but also getting devs involved? What's your goal with this initiative?
Yeah, so the goal really is just to showcase what's possible, and we are really trying to go after the developer community, because the wider developer community might not be aware that you can utilize these tools right now. So the same tools that have already been in the hands of the Department of Defense, you can get access to those tools and build out these crazy applications. And it's not just Web3 tooling. It's you could take your existing Web2 business or application and plug that in. I mean, there's tons of different ways that this technology can be utilized. A couple of weeks ago, the Constellation, they had they built out a different metagraph. They built out this alpaca metagraph, so it's like a social token, and to get like what you were talking about, different data points all converging into one place and doing the transactions on that. It's that type of application that's not really possible on any other networks. So how this alpaca token initially is working from Constellation, I'll also make a note that metagraph example is on their public GitHub repo. So any developer can literally just copy and paste what's on the public GitHub and change it and tweak it into their own use case. But how Constellation is initially showing out the use case is it's rewarding people with these packet tokens by several different metrics. One, by performing swaps on within the Stargazer wallet. There's Exolix, so that's one of the partners. So if you perform a swap or you buy a token, you get rewarded with this packet token. The other way you can get rewarded with a packet token is if you're on a wait list for a node, right? So then that's two separate two separate places that it's looking for data, but it's rewarding you with a token. And so how you can actually scale this out in a more meaningful way is, let's say you guys, right? BitLab Academy, you guys had your own metagraph. You could have your BitLab token. And to engage and incentivize your community, you could have call to action. And when people hit that call to action, reply, subscribe to your YouTube channel. They could get rewarded with this BitLab token. You know, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on X, join Telegram, do all these different things, and they could each get rewarded with a token. And how is that valuable? Well, a couple of weeks ago, I pointed out to everybody that isn't quite seeing what's happening is, so I'm going to talk about another network for just a second. The open network, TON, T-O-N, right? So they have all these crazy apps on Telegram, and they initially launched their tokens in the same sort of manner. It was to engage and incentivize participation in the community. So last year, the open network, it wasn't even in the top 100 market cap. And all of a sudden in May, they're a top 10. And it, boom. Yeah. I mean, and that's all you need, right? And so we're really hoping with this hackathon that it's going to energize the broader developer community to just be aware that this tooling is out there. And the kit that we have for people to start off with, you can literally build your base application in under 10 minutes. I mean, that's how quick it is. One of the guys in the community, did it, and he timed it. So he got his own, mock network up and running in under 10 minutes.
I mean, what I'm really hearing here, because I'm thinking as an educator, and I'm also thinking as, an investor and a speculator in the market, because I'm doing all of those things. And one of the things that I look for most importantly, especially in the crypto ecosystem, is strength of team, right? If you're investing, or even if you're holding something longer than, if you're not trading it on the 15-minute chart, then what's the strength of the team? What's the vision going forward? What's the infrastructure already in place? And that infrastructure, I don't just mean the technology, but like, for instance, DAG, y'all's infrastructure also includes talk about rooted partnerships, U.S. Air Force, Panasonic, and many of the other partnerships that you guys have. Really shows that there's not only a long-term vision, but there's staying power, especially in an ecosystem where the majority is just hype. What I really like about DAG, though, is that you guys have been somewhat, I don't want to say in the background. You haven't put a lot of energy and focus on, hey, let's hype the coin and pump the market, which I think a lot of, it's that meme coin mentality that even some mid caps and even some large cap coins, they focus so much on what the price performance of the token is. Now, do we want the price performance of a token to go up over time? Absolutely. But what I'm more interested in, what is the what do they call it? The tortoise and the hare. Those that are focused on building will not only be around longer, but will have much more substantiated gains in the long term. So tell us a little bit, tell me a little bit about Panasonic or any of the, of course, U.S. Air Force, but if there's any other sort of partnerships or not licenses, but strong governing bodies or other things within the crypto ecosystem, within the AI ecosystem that you all are already currently working with or aligning with into the future? Because it seems like you guys have a pretty strong integration within the space already.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point that I've noticed personally about the broader crypto community. It's this get rich quick, this instant gratification. But if you look at it from a traditional standpoint, the approach that Constellation is doing isn't any different than Amazon. And I like to point to Amazon to everybody because they had a similar trajectory. Amazon first, IPO'd like in the mid 90s, right? And it essentially didn't really do much until the mid 2000s. And then it went completely parabolic. And then during that time, there was plenty of people, close people to Jeff Bezos that, told him to pack it up. He gave it a good try, or even laughed at his idea because they didn't really get it. But Jeff, nonetheless, persevered. He knew what he was doing, and he knew that this stuff was the future. And Constellation, in the same sort of manner, has understood for quite a while that at the end of the day, the underlying infrastructure that ties in everything, AI, physical devices, it's all just data. And that's what they've been doing. They've been building this physical infrastructure to manage and streamline data. And to get back to your question about the broader partnerships that are important to the people that are going to sort of the decision makers and the policy makers, what I like to point out to people, if you want to get a window into actually what is happening, right now the big news is Trump's going to be at Nashville talking about blockchain and the government. Well, nobody is deeper involved within the blockchain space than Constellation's network. So it's not just the Air Force, it's not just the Department of Defense or the Space Force. You can look at what they're doing with the National DigiFoundry. So the National DigiFoundry is a collaborative effort between federal and enterprise participations, and they're looking and they're exploring ways to implement digital assets. And why is this important? Well, this is important because these people are actually using blockchain to explore different ways to implement digital assets. And it's not just Space Force. You have the Department of Education. The Department of Education is in the DigiFoundry, and they're in the Secure Information Sharing Working Group that's actually co-chaired by Constellation. So you have the website pulled up. There's Department of Defense, there's the U.S. Treasury, and there's Dr. David Beck of the U.S. Space Force, who actually is one of the judges of this hackathon. So if you wanted even more validation, I mean, look at that. You have a member, a high-ranking member of the United States Space Force that's judging this hackathon.
So
you have the U.S. Department of Treasury that. Yeah,
I just want to pause you for a second, because when other people have brought up Space Force in the past, I think there's been a sort of, I'll call it an ignorant sort of cloud over that, because I don't think broadly people really understand. Let's call it real estate. Let's call it asset value that is sitting in the development of what's happening in space, and why, it is important that we do have a Space Force, because of the ever expanding utility of everything that's being basically deployed in space for even ground comms or connectivity or even weaponry. So why, especially with blockchain, I was just at ETHCC in Brussels this last week, and I heard quite a few different people mention some really interesting applications in terms of the forward thinking about why blockchain is going to be necessary, considering integrations with Space Force into the future. So can you talk about a little bit about that? And does Constellation DAG have any sort of integration with that as well? Is that also part of, for instance, the U.S. Air Force partnership, or how is blockchain integrated?
So if you head back to that DigiFoundry website and you actually open the secure the Space Force. So if you go down, there's a space into the Space Force working group tab. So you can see that it's not just Space Force. There we go, Space Force working group. Just open up that tab there. You can see that it's not just Space Force, and then look for everybody to see that's not a Bitcoin address. That's not even a Solana address or an Ethereum address. That's a DAG address. That's a Constellation DAG address. And if you follow that address and you go on to Constellation's Explorer, you can actually see that there's real tokens associated with that. That's Dr. David Beck of the Space Force talking about how Space Force actually manages all space assets that most people aren't even aware of. So this stream, for example, is no doubt being used by some commercial satellites, broadband satellites, and Space Force is basically managing all commercial satellite data. And within that working group, it actually talks about different applications that they're actually exploring, and it specifically says blockchain on there. Some of the applications that they're working and testing right now are with these autonomous robots. And one of these things was actually sent up, I think, sometime last year. So Forward Edge AI, they have this Berry satellite robot. And that's one of the ways that blockchain specifically can be taken advantage of, because you have an immutable data layer. So you don't want somebody hacking your autonomous robot in space that's maybe going to be working on another robot, or maybe like a refueling robot, right? You don't want your adversarial networks going in there and putting in some sort of code. And so that's where the blockchain application happens, because you have an immutable layer. Nobody can just put in some sort of code. And because everything is anonymized, it doesn't matter if they somehow intercepted the stream. I mean, it would be meaningless to them, right? Because there's nothing that they could do with that underlying data.
Yeah, and taking it a step further, considering the deployment of these space assets, whether it's a satellite, whether it's a rocket, whether it's a robot, some of these, I mean, these are not $10,000 items. They're not $100,000. Some of them are in the hundreds of millions into the billions, and they take, 5, 10, 15, 20 years to conceptualize, to deliver into space. And part of that, what I find really interesting, especially with smart contracts built into blockchain, you can set up these contracts as well as funding, as well as so much of this that's built in and imbued into any sort of individualized, let's say this is DAG-1, and we're going to launch this satellite, and it's going to have so much different digital real estate for utility that you can set up the contracts years in advance. It's immutable, and it's basically self-functioning, because that's how blockchain works once you program the smart contracts. I think in reality, you all are so smart with DAG. And so many people in the blockchain space. It's amazing to see the developments that are here. And I don't even think we're at 0.1% of the use cases that these blockchains are going to be deployed into the future. And because of that, I think DAG is very beautifully positioned, because of how fast it can operate, because you can do multiple things at one time, considering we haven't even really ideated many of the use cases are going to be there. So something that's limited or has congestible networks, I think, is already setting themselves up for failure into the future, since we haven't identified all the different use cases that are going to be employed.
No, you're exactly right. And you bring up smart contracts, which are a great, useful tool and starting point. But smart contracts are actually old technology, and the advantage metagraphs has over smart contracts. So smart contracts are automated, and that's great, and they can be secure, and that's great, but they're limited. What you can do with them from an application standpoint is pretty limited. It's just if this happens, then this is the outcome, right? But in real life, you have multiple things happening all at once. And that's the beauty of these metagraphs. You can have custom consensus. So you can tailor your application and to have multiple different scenarios all simultaneously hitting, and then have your internal consensus mechanism figure out, what to do from there. This is real edge computing. So, it's just like what people come up with. I mean, it's going to be pretty wild to see in this hackathon. And that's what excites me the most, is going for. So it's going to be an 8-week thing. And, yeah, I'm super excited just to see the type of applications people come up with. But there's already quite a few metagraphs that are in the waiting period to launch publicly. A couple of weeks ago, I had this company Entrana that's launching a metagraph on Constellation's network. They're not part of this hackathon, but they're already building an application. So Entrana is going to make it easier for small to medium-sized businesses to integrate some of Quant's tooling. So Quant has this overledger, 3 lines of code. It's great, but unless you're a developer or have money to hire a developer, it's not exactly intuitive. And so what Entrana has done is made an application, and all of that stuff works in the background. So you don't even have to, it's completely plug and play. And there's where the interoperability comes from. So Entrana is the metagraph, and it's taking Constellation's tooling, and it's taking Quant's tooling, and it's making its own unique application. And these guys are going to allow you to plug in directly traditional financial institutions. So your Merrill account, your Fidelity account, your Wells Fargo account will all directly tie into this. And these guys are also the co-chairs for the Financial Product Tokenization Working Group on the National DigiFoundry. And guess who else sits on that Financial Product Tokenization Group? The U.S. Department of Treasury. So,
I mean,
they're not.
yeah, talking about the the broad, especially like when regulation has been such a big consideration. It seems to me, as somebody that's looking at the many tens of thousands of crypto that are available, and again, you hit the nail on the head. So many people, they don't even look at the tech. They say, "I heard about this, I'm going to go buy it." Well, I want to I want to encourage every one of you that's watching this, whether you thought this video is exciting, whether you thought it was boring, whether you only wanted to see charts with price levels to buy. That's not what this is about. When you're looking at an opportunity, when you're trying to find the right opportunities based on what has the right integrations, that has the right partners, that is working with the U.S. Department of Treasury on the board, the head of the U.S. Space Force, Panasonic is a partner, IBM is a partner, U.S. Air Force, Transcom. This is what I'd be looking to if I'm like, ooh, if there is a regulatory crackdown, which one's going to get an axe first? Not the one that has everybody that's integrated in government. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but when I'm looking to the future and I'm saying who's really doing the work behind the scenes and isn't so excited about, hey, let's do the next shiny thing. No, this is real integrated. Man, I want to sit and talk to you for another hour and just pick your brain on this stuff, because I'm learning along the way, and that's what I love sharing with my audience here. I do want to, I know you're a busy guy with a lot of things going on your team. Is there anything else you wanted to tell us here in the last maybe 5 or 8 minutes, or just wrap it out? Let me know what else you wanted to highlight here.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any developers, watching, even if you have, rudimentary development experience, I just would encourage you to check out this hackathon that's kicking off today. It's going to go over 8 weeks. Yeah, I mean, there's $100,000 up for grabs. And if you wanted an idea of why this is a big deal, I mean, just look at the headliners. I mean, Panasonic, IBM, Simba Chain might not be that widely known to the average retail guy, but we could spend an hour just talking about Simba Chain alone, with all of the different enterprise clients that they're involved with. And even them specifically, they're deeply involved in the federal government. They've been awarded contracts that are, tens of millions of dollars. They have a logistics contract with the Air Force. So, yeah, I mean, if you want something that's set up for the future, this is Constellation. And from like an investment, like, I guess if some people are wanting something that's going to have some sort of impact on the price. Well, Constellation's token DAG, that's the currency that's going to be needed to send data to the network. So these metagraphs
and I'm going to pause you there for just a second. Everybody that is here that watches me on a daily basis, I break down charts. And again, I will tell you right now, I will tell you all right now.
I forgot that.
I will tell you all right now, I am not, and also Dagnam here, we are not telling you to buy. I'm merely shining a spotlight on something that's making a huge impact in the space. And from a technical level, this looks like it's coming into a very good opportunity zone if you're looking at strategy and where to look into the future for an asset. And yeah, DAG is that token with Constellation DAG. And if anybody's wondering where to get it, remember, you go to coinmarketcap.com, click on, type in Constellation, it'll bring it up, markets, shows you everywhere you can buy it. I cut you off there. I just wanted to let people know where they could find this if they're trying to make some sort of strategic investment.
Yeah, and so how it comes in, like the token, right? Because that's where I would say a lot of people, are wanting like a solid investment, because you're not going to want something that's gonna tank, right? You're going to want to buy an investment that's going to go up. And how one of the ways it will go up is by the usage. So to give people kind of an idea of the potential usage, if you go onto their website, Constellation's website, they have this fee structure that they break down, and they have a price comparison using what some people thought was like a laughable metric of 54 million transactions a month. And they compare that 54 million transactions a month with Ethereum, Hedera, and Solana. And basically that 54 million transactions would cost whatever company $3,000 roughly with Constellation. It would cost them like $54 million with Ethereum. Like nobody in their right mind would use Ethereum for any kind of business like that. Hedera, I think, was 5,000, and Solana was like around 6,000. So still, Constellation is, cheaper than even what is advertised all over the place as a cheap, scalable alternative to Ethereum. And so you're going to say, okay, great, but nobody's doing 54 million transactions a month, right? And that's where I'm going to stop you. Because in 2019, US Transcom, remember, they built that metagraph for US Transcom starting in 2019. US Transcom was sending 2 terabytes of data every 60 seconds. 2 terabytes. I mean, just think about that.
Every 60 seconds?
Every 60 seconds, US Transcom in 2019 was sending 2 terabytes of data. 2 terabytes every 60 seconds. So to give people a kind of an idea of just how massive that is, I mean, I don't even know how many movies you can fit into a 2 terabyte file, but the average email, just a basic email, is like 75 kilobytes, right? There's 1,000 kilobytes in a megabyte, and there's 1,000 megabytes in a gigabyte. And they were sending 2 terabytes of data every 60 seconds. And the Metagraph's freemium model, so the free thing, if you have this basic rudimentary application that's maybe not sending that much data, you can send a snapshot for free if it's under 50 kilobytes. Okay. And to give an idea, so that's the other thing that I kind of wanted to hammer on for some people that don't really know the differences. Somebody the other day was, spreading kind of some misinformation about transactions. Well, yeah, the Metagraph themselves, the layer 1 application built on the network, takes these transactions of data from whatever it is that you're building. It can be like a Wi-Fi toaster, right? So I'm validating all the Wi-Fi toasters on my network. And then it takes all of that data and it bundles it up. And it submits it as a snapshot. So in this bundle of data, you could literally have thousands or tens of thousands of transactions all wrapped up, right? And these snapshots being sent out can literally be happening in the thousands themselves. So you've got thousands of transactions within just one snapshot. And then that snapshot is being sent out to the global network.
Well, I mean, I think that highlights something I don't think people really have a deep understanding of yet. I think they've heard the term, but they don't really know what the Internet of Things is. And as blockchain becomes more pervasive and integrated in our world and every part of our life, I think that's why it's really cool. You know that not only cool, it's like it's a true positive fundamental aspect of the infrastructure DAG already has with the partnership with U.S. Air Force. But then now that Panasonic's come online, everybody watching right now, Panasonic doesn't just make TVs. Okay. Panasonic has so many, they're like Yamaha. They make boat engines. They do this. It's so many different aspects. And when we consider, as Dagnam was saying earlier, everything is becoming more efficient based on capturing data. So as he said, Levi's store was a great example. You walk in the store, I want to aggregate the data, how many people walk in, the time that they're there, how that converts to sales, but then how that also tracks with my online market, tying all this together to get all this data together. But there's so many aspects beyond this with the Internet of Things as things come online to understand how can we actually track that data. It's not going to be possible with Ethereum. It's not going to be possible even with, I love Matic, but it's not going to be possible with that. It's going to need something that has this sort of multi-factor approach that can, as you just said, it packages all these things, it bundles them, but allows it to happen simultaneously without congesting the network, because that's going to be, I think, the downfall of a lot of brand partnerships that happen with other parts of the crypto ecosystem, is when things start getting congested and there's more adoption and more utility within said chain, all of a sudden it's going to be very obvious that this TPS for those, when it's a single lane highway versus a like I think of DAG as essentially like a multiverse of all opportunities going in every different direction, 5D versus having a single lane of traffic that, okay, you put a high-speed rail on it, but it's still a single lane.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. And it can scale. And so that's the other thing too, is, people need to be aware, and developers should be aware, and the retail people should be aware, is these problems with scalability on other networks isn't a thing on Constellation, because these metagraphs themselves all scale independently. They're all independent networks. So like that Intrana network that I was talking about, or even, let's say Panasonic wanted to actually build a network. These are separate networks. It would be the equivalent of like a Solana, right? Or, XRP, or even like Hedera. So it's its own blockchain network built on top of the hypergraph. And it's a separate independent network. And each one of these separate independent networks can scale horizontally infinitely. So it can keep going. All they need to do is get more nodes on the network. And so how do you do that? Well, you incentivize them with participation, right? So it's like, okay, you come on our network, on the Panasonic network or the Levi's network, and we'll reward you with Levi's tokens. Right? I mean, it's it's super simple.
I'm just going to clarify just for everybody and for myself. And for instance, Panasonic launches a metagraph on top of Constellation DAG. It's its own network, but then is it operating on the DAG fee structure? So then it's also driving utility for DAG as well?
Correct. So if Panasonic
See what I mean,
opted
everybody?
to, yes. So if Panasonic opted to get a token, for example, to incentivize people to participate in this network, that could happen. If they wanted to submit data to the global ledger and have that be swappable with other networks, because there's an interoperability component to it, right? So you need DAG. So DAG is the data, and if you go over, that's that calculator that I was talking about, where if you go over the freemium model, you're going to need to pay like a fee, right? But that's only towards the big data providers. So
Right.
Constellation Network is always going to be free on a peer-to-peer user basis. So that's the other advantage of this network. So if like me to you, I mean, let's just say you have a Panasonic NFT that you want to send me. Well, right now, if you do it on Ethereum, a lot of times the cost of sending it is actually more than the cost of the NFT itself. But on Constellation's network, because it's feeless on that respect, it's always going to be free, right? So you and I can send as many NFTs as we want to each other, and there's going to be zero cost to it. I can send you DAG right now, and it doesn't cost me anything.
I mean, my mind is like kind of warped around how far this space has evolved from, I consider like the credit card and debit card space, and that took 50 years to reach critical mass, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
there was these different peer-to-peer semi digicash kind of things, and then Bitcoin came on to, to the global finance sector, global sovereignty sector. And then it's just how fast it's progressed, with Ethereum and XRP and Cardano. It's been like every layer has been better. And I think a lot of them will have their own use cases. But when I think to, truly integrating into the future, I mean, my mind is blown that I wasn't paying more attention to Constellation DAG in the past. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving me. I feel like I just took the next wave of blockchain that's already here, but you're just hearing about it. Sort of professorial breakdown, and I really do appreciate it. I know I've been holding you hostage here for about almost an hour. Do you have anything you wanted to wrap out with other than reminding people to check out the Metagraph and Constellation DAG Hackathon that started today with partners with
Starting
Panasonic and
today.
IBM?
Yeah, starting today, get out there and start building your application-specific network on a network that's validated as a secure, scalable solution by the Department of Defense, and build alongside people that are going to partner you, like IBM and Panasonic. I mean, IBM is putting up like $18,000 in cloud infrastructure credits, which is huge. I mean, that's massive. Just take a deep dive rabbit hole into IBM and who's all using them. And, I mean, we haven't even begun to peel back all the layers of the onion. I look forward to seeing everybody that's going to go to Bitcoin Nashville. I'll be there, and really appreciate you having me on. And I'd be happy to join anytime.
Yeah, everybody, you can follow him right here at Dagnum, which is at DAGNUM_PI at Dagnum Pi. PI, like Magnum PI, but Dagnum_PI. I'm going to say that 6 times, everybody, because there's so many people out there that create fake profiles. Make sure you're following the correct one. There's only one, Dagnum_PI. Also, make sure you're checking out Constellation network.io. I'll have the links down in the description down below. And of course, in addition to all this, there was one other one I wanted to share with you. Make sure you're following Stardust Collective right here at Stardust Collective, and the L's are ones. So there's 2 ones. You can see it right there on the screen. And stay in the know of what's going on there. Make sure you're watching more streams like this, following more people like Dagnum PI, and looking not to what's the price going to do in 3 minutes. Ask who's building. Remember, when Chainlink broke out, everybody, I showed you before it happened, there's fundamental data you can look to. And one of those things, in this case with Constellation DAG, they are building, they have the not only partnership infrastructure, but also real people of power and provenance within the US government, within the Department of Defense, within major global brands like IBM, like Panasonic. This is what you want to look to when you're asking who's going to be around in the future. And when you look at that chart, I'm going to show you again. When you look at that chart, this is coming into, I mean, this is a broad view, the last 4 years. This is coming right into a zone. I know what I'm doing right now when I'm looking at this chart. I hope you guys do a little bit more diligence on everything that's happening here. Again, thank you so much to Dagnum PI for being here. My name's Kelly Kellam. Make sure you're going through those links that I shared in the stream, as well as the links down below. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day. This story, this message brought to you by diligence, because that's what we need to do if we want to make it in this world. Everybody, hope you have a wonderful day. That's all I got. Adios, muchachos.